Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Saturday, everybody. I hope your day and your weekend are off to a fantastic start. The NBA playoffs are officially here, and I've got some really great player props to go ahead and share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day and the start of the NBA postseason comes a ton of new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. Guys, I have an incredible amount of player props to go ahead and share with you guys in today's NBA slate. I have 5 single bets followed by a 4-leg parlay. So 9 player props total being shared in today's video. A ton of little treats in your Easter basket for today's slate. By the way, guys, if you are watching today's video, I hope you guys all have a happy Easter, a happy holiday. Hope you guys enjoy the weekend and the day with your family. If you are watching today's video, comment happy Easter down below. For me personally, it's one of the biggest holidays of the year. Obviously, we are Greek Orthodox, so Easter is the biggest holiday of the year. It's also my name day, which in Greek culture is like basically bigger than your birthday. You basically, if you're Greek, you have like 2 birthdays. You have your name day and then your birthday. So tomorrow is a very big day. It's my name day, and it's also Easter, so massive holiday for us. I also do like the fasting, no meat, no dairy. I've done it basically vegan for the last 50 days. Tomorrow officially stops it. I can eat whatever I want again. So very big day, very big holiday. So really looking forward to that. So if you guys can, comment happy Easter down below. We do have to do a quick little recap before we dive into today's picks. And guys, we were so close last night to cashing our Freaky Friday 5-leg parlay. 4 to 5 legs cash. We did miss very narrowly there on the Onyeka Okongwu pick, under 31.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. He blew through the line, finished with like I think 28 points and 12 rebounds, and I think maybe a assist. But the rest of our player props, Zach Edey, a bit of a sweat. A lot of these were sweats, but we did cash on 4 of the 5. So if you did take some of these legs and put them in your own parlay, congratulations. We did miss the mark, however, though, very narrowly. 4 out of 5. Like also baseball yesterday, 4 out of 5 legs hit. So both very close misses in both videos. But you know what yesterday tells me, guys? That we were pretty close to being on the money. Again, 4 of the 5 player props I handed out were correct. The one lost. That's how a parlay works, unfortunately. But I'm feeling very confident going to today's slate. We have a ton of picks, a ton of opportunity to go ahead and make some money. Let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into today's picks. All right, guys, jumping right into the outlier screen. Our first player prop in today's slate comes from the Bucks-Pacers game. 1 p.m. tip-off. We got Brook Lopez of the Milwaukee Bucks over 15.5 points plus rebounds, which we're getting for minus 122 odds over on FanDuel. As always, guys, make sure to shop around for the best sportsbook odds available. For this player prop, only available on FanDuel. But obviously, for every player prop I share, there's going to be multiple sportsbooks and varying odds that you can go ahead and tail. Now, the data across the board is pretty solid on this one. 6 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 19.1 points plus rebounds per game over the last 10 games. And honestly, the further and further you go ahead and stretch the data out, it's still pretty solid. Last 20 games, 65% hit rate, averaging 19.7 points plus rebounds per game. Overall this year, a 63% hit rate on the over, averaging 18.07 points plus rebounds per game overall this year. So pretty good numbers there for Brook Lopez. Even from the head-to-head department here, a pretty large sample size too. 10 of his last 15 matchups with the Indiana Pacers, he's cashed the over. That's a 67% hit rate, averaging 19.6 points plus rebounds per game over the last 15 matchups, which does include last year's playoffs. So pretty good sample size, and obviously with Damian Lillard being out, you know that Brook Lopez is going to be looked at to carry more of the load, specifically offensively. So far this year, when Damian Lillard does not play, Brook Lopez a 73% hit rate on the over, 16 out of 22 games without Dame Dollar. He's cashed the over, averaging 20.77 points plus rebounds per game without Damian Lillard this year. Also, on the road this year, he's been fantastic. A 72% hit rate on the road this year, 28 out of 39 games on the road. He's cashed the over, averaging 18.79 points plus rebounds per game. And look at this little run he's been on since February. He has cashed this, I believe the insights will tell us, he's cashed the line of 17.5 points plus rebounds in 16 straight games. We are getting this line at 15.5. So you could take it at 17.5. The data is actually still pretty solid. But 16 straight road games, he's cashed the over, and it's been a really great run. Again, like I said, this is a lot of good data on this player prop. Indiana overall defensively, not a great team. Bottom half of the league in both points and rebounds allowed overall. Versus centers, 19th in points, 25th in rebounds. And if you narrow it down to the last like 15 games of the year, it's still pretty consistent. Miles Turner, not the rim protector he once was. So pretty solid first player prop to kick off today's video. All right, guys, moving right along. Our second player prop in today's slate comes from the Clippers-Nuggets game, 3:30 p.m. tip-off. We got Kawhi Leonard of the LA Clippers over 24.5 points. We're getting this one for -130 on FanDuel, but like I said, available on multiple sports books for varying odds. Data is not as sharp as the last player prop, although the recent data is pretty solid. 7 of his last 10 games to close out the year, he cashed the over. That's, of course, a 70% hit rate, averaging 26.4 points per game over his last 10 games. He scored at least 20 points in each of his last 10 games, so really good numbers there for Kawhi to close out the season, including that impressive season finale game versus the Warriors, where the Clippers obviously secured their spot in the postseason with 33 points from Kawhi. So pretty good numbers there. Even the last 20 games, 55% hit rate, not bad, averaging 25.45 points per game over the last 20. Overall this year, not great. He's only played 37 games this year, and he's only cashed the over in 38% of those games. Like I said, data is not as sharp here, and from a head-to-head perspective, he has not played Denver since 2023, early 2023. He cashed the over in one of his last 3 matchups against Denver, but not too much to go off of here. Again, this was well over a year ago that these data points come from. Ultimately, I'm taking a little bit of a risk here with this player prop, but I just like the matchup here. Denver overall defensively, not a great team this year. 24th overall in points allowed versus small forwards. They're 20th. A little bit better versus power forwards. Kawhi kind of plays between the 3 and the 4 spot. They do rank okay versus power forwards, not very good versus small forwards. But overall, defensively, they're just not that great of a team. It's one of the reasons why Mike Malone was fired. I do think Kawhi, the way that he's playing over those final 10 games, the way that he came out there, he looked, I don't want to say like San Antonio Spurs Kawhi, but the closest he's looked to at least Toronto Kawhi since he's been in LA. I mean, he looks healthy for the first time in a long time. He's playing hard. He's playing tough. And it just goes to show when he's healthy, he is one of the better players in the NBA still. It just sucks that over the last really 5 or 6 years, the guy has just not been able to stay healthy. So I'm just betting on him continuing this good, solid form against a team that, again, defensively, just not that good this year. So that's our second player prop in today's slate. And again, guys, these are our single bets. I will make sure to specify when we move on to the parlay portion of today's video. All right, guys, our third player prop is coming from the Pistons-Knicks game. I actually have 2 player props coming from this game. It has a 6 p.m. tip-off. Our first leg from this game, not our first leg, our first player prop. This is not a parlay. I'll make sure to specify when it's a parlay. We have Jalen Brunson over 2.5 3-pointers made. Now, I typically don't like doing too many of these player props because 3-pointers made, they're very much like touchdown props in the NFL. They're way too wildly unpredictable. But I'm taking a shot here. -104 odds over on FanDuel. Pretty good value. It's available on a lot of sports books for varying odds. The data is not too bad here. 49% hit rate on the year, which is not great, but not terrible. Over the last 10 games, 60% hit rate, averaging 2.6 3-pointers made per game. But the real reason why I like this player prop is the head-to-head data here for Jalen Brunson. 6 of his last 7 matchups against the Detroit Pistons, he's cashed the over. That's an 86% hit rate, and he's averaging 3.71 3-pointers made per game against Detroit. Had some pretty big games there. They played 4 times this year. He's cashed the over in 3 out of those 4 games. The biggest one being back on November 1st. He had 6 3-pointers made in what was a 30-point win for the Knicks. And Detroit overall were not a great defensive team in terms of 3-pointers. Middle of the road overall, but versus point guards, they were 23rd in the NBA. That is bottom 7 in the league. So they give up a lot of threes to point guards. Again, I don't like doing these props too much, but for -104 odds, it's pretty strong value. Really good head-to-head data. You also have obviously the EV Plus stuff going on there, which obviously indicates this is a pretty solid bet to go ahead and tail. So that's our third player prop in today's slate. I failed to mention on the last prop, they literally just played back on April 10th, and he cashed the over with 3 3-pointers made back on April 10th. So a pretty recent data point there to go ahead and show you guys that 3-point line is pretty solid for Brunson. Our fourth player prop in today's slate comes from the Pistons-Knicks game. Again, second player prop from this game, fourth player prop overall. We're going Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons over 32.5 points plus rebounds. This one's a little juiced. -144 on FanDuel. Again, you're going to have to pay a little extra to make a little extra, but not too shabby. The recent data is fantastic. The head-to-head data is fantastic. The overall data, it's okay. 8 of his last 10 games, including each of his last 6 games, he cashed the over, averaging 35.3 points plus rebounds per game over his last 10 games. Even last 5 games to close out the year, 38.8 points plus rebounds per game. Really good runs there, including right there versus the Knicks, 36 points and 2 rebounds. Jumping right to the head-to-head data here, 5 of his last 6 matchups against the New York Knicks, he's cashed the over. That is, of course, an 83% hit rate, averaging 35.5 points plus rebounds per game over their last 6 matchups. They played 4 times so far this year. He's cashed the over in 3 of those 4 games, including 3 consecutive matchups with the Knicks. And we have rebounds here mainly because the Knicks are not a great rebounding team of late, and that's why I put it in here. But honestly, he covers it mostly in points. I mean, 36 points, 36 points, 29 points. He did have 10 rebounds in this one. His scoring will carry most of the load, but I do like the rebound portion because the Knicks lately have not been that great of a rebounding team over the last 15 games to close out the year versus point guards. But like I said, overall numbers not great. 49% hit rate, not good, not bad. 32.21 points plus rebounds per game. Definitely got a little hotter as the season went along. But overall, I think it's a pretty good player prop here. Again, the Knicks overall this year, 20th in points allowed to point guards, 7th in rebounds allowed. However, narrow it down to the last 15 games, the Knicks were 21st in points allowed to point guards, so about where their season average is, but they were 25th in rebounds allowed to point guards over the last 15 games of the year. So over the last basically last month of the season, their numbers versus point guards in terms of points and rebounds allowed, not great. Bottom 10, which obviously is very good for us here in this matchup. Like I said, a little juiced for sure, minus 144, not the best value in terms of an odds standpoint, but I still think it's very much worth it to go ahead and take a shot on. Throw in your parlay. If you want to go ahead and take it at 33.5, where the odds are slightly better, you can, but do understand the data is not going to be as solid. Still pretty good though, 67% hit rate from a head-to-head standpoint, still 8 of his last 10, and it's only minus 110 now. So you can go ahead and take 33.5. I'm playing the safer side and going 32.5, but that's obviously totally up to preference here. All right, guys, on our fifth and final single bet in today's video, it comes from the Timberwolves-Lakers game, 8:30 p.m. tip-off. We got another player prop that's a little juiced here from an odds standpoint, but again, I still think it's worth taking a shot at here. We got Rudy Gobert of the Minnesota Timberwolves over 10.5 rebounds, minus 140 over on DraftKings. That is available on multiple sports books for varying odds. Data's pretty solid across the board here. 8 of his last 10 games, he cashed the over, averaging 14.9 rebounds per game over his last 10 games. You do go ahead and look at the overall season data here for Gobert, a 51% hit rate on the season. So again, not terrible, not great either, but pretty solid. 51% hit rate, averaging 10.9 rebounds per game overall this year. So like I said, pretty good numbers across the board here for Gobert in every category. You pretty much see consistent green here last 20 games. 60% hit rate. What I'm really looking at too, though, is the head-to-head data, which is really solid here. Each of his last 6 matchups with the Los Angeles Lakers dating back to last season, he's cashed the over. That is, of course, a 100% hit rate over their last 6 meetings, averaging 13.5 rebounds per game over their last 6 matchups. They played 3 times so far this year. He's cashed the over in all 3 games, 14 rebounds back on October 22nd, 12 rebounds on December 2nd, and 13 rebounds in the most recent matchup back on December 13th. Now, back then, the Lakers still had Anthony Davis. They don't have him anymore. One of the big things I'm curious to see in this series is how Minnesota will use their size against the smaller lineups the Lakers have. Now, the Lakers, they don't have a ton of height, but they actually have a lot of big, bulky guys that are not easy to push around. So, yes, they don't have necessarily the height advantage here, but they don't have these little pipsqueaks. I think that's the way a lot of people talk about the Lakers. I mean, Rui Hachimura, LeBron, like you go through these guys, these are not little guys. But obviously, the Lakers don't really have a true natural center. Jackson Hayes has been playing solid, but he's not, I would say, a natural true center that you would want in a playoff matchup like this. I'll be interested to see if they run Gobert off the court with their smaller ball lineups, or if Gobert will be able to stay in and dominate the boards, which I do think he'll probably do here. The Lakers overall, they're middle of the road in terms of rebounds allowed. If you do narrow it down to the last 15 games, kind of the same picture. They weren't a terrible rebounding team considering they don't really have a true natural center. Over the last 15 games, the Lakers were like 17th in rebounds allowed to center. So again, about middle of the road. But I do think Gobert, he's had a pretty good head-to-head history against the Lakers. Minus 140 odds, I think it's worth definitely taking a shot at. And if we go ahead and look down below here at what centers have done from a rebound perspective, Donovan Clingan, granted, that was end of the year. Who knows? You know, the Lakers, I don't think they really played that hard. He had 12 rebounds in that game. A lot of the X's you do see here are kind of bench bigs. Although you do see, Chet Holmgren only had 4 rebounds, but Isaiah Hartenstein, 15 rebounds when his line was 8.5. You do have some center, Ivis Messi, 11 rebounds when his line was 7.5. Again, you have some guys here who, you know, some bench players who I'm not really too overly concerned with, but you do see some pretty big rebounding performances from some of these guys against the Lakers. So I think from minus 140, yes, it's a little juice. I still think it's worth taking a shot at. All right, guys, that ends the single bet portion of today's video. I know it's going to be a longer video, but we have a 4-leg parlay to go ahead and close out. I'm going to try and go through as fast as I can without necessarily rushing the data here. But our first leg of our 4-leg parlay, again, we are using FanDuel for this parlay. First leg of our 4-leg parlay, we're going back in time to that Bucks-Pacers game, 1 p.m. tip-off. We're going Giannis Antetokounmpo over 10.5 rebounds. Again, these are all alternate lines we're using, minus 270 odds. For the guy who told me in the comments yesterday that alternate lines are for wussies, you probably aren't winning that much money then, because I don't know if you're putting straight bets and parlays. Yeah, once in a while you're hitting, the odds are and the money is pretty good, but you're not hitting all that consistently. When it comes to betting big multi-leg parlays, like in this case a 4-leg parlay, alternate lines definitely the way to go. But pretty good data, of course. Being an alternate line, you would expect it to be solid data. 6 of his last 10 games, including each of his last 5 to close out the year, he cashed this over of 10.5 rebounds. Overall this year, a 74% hit rate on the over, 50 out of 68 games. He cashed the over, averaging 12.01 rebounds per game this season. And from a head-to-head perspective, 6 of his last 9. We're going to go ahead and pause for applause there. 6 of his last 9. He's cashed the over versus Indiana. It's a 67% hit rate, averaging 12.67 rebounds per game. Even when he's missed against Indiana, he literally has had 10 rebounds. So, he's always around that line. It's going to be interesting to see if he can cross it, but Indiana overall this year, not a great rebounding team, bottom 10 in the NBA. You go look at individual positions, power forward, 25th in rebounds, small forward, 8th. I think Yanni obviously doesn't really fit into a natural category in terms of position. I do think he should be able to dominate the boards here. Again, he's pretty good track record versus Indiana. Pretty good track record overall this year. So pretty good player prop here for the first leg of our 4-leg parlay. For our second leg in our 4-leg parlay, we're moving back on to the Clippers-Nuggets game, 3:30 p.m. tip-off. I'm going Ivica Zubac here, over 26.5 points plus rebounds, minus 250 odds over on FanDuel. Some guys might look at this and go, whoa, I'm throwing Zubac in this parlay. This might be cooked. But if he's been the best kept secret in the NBA over the last couple months, he's on an incredible run. Now, the overall number is pretty solid. 65% hit rate. Again, this is an alternate line, so of course the data is going to be naturally pretty good. But 65% hit rate overall this year, averaging 29.38 points plus rebounds per game overall this year. However, each of his last 10 games to close out the year, he cashed the over. And 18 of his last 20 games to finish the year with the Clippers, he cashed the over. That's a 90% hit rate over his last 20 games, averaging 32.45 points plus rebounds per game over his last 20 games. So some really phenomenal recent data here for Zubac, and the overall data is pretty solid also. The one thing that is a little alarming here, and it's one thing that might turn a lot of people off this player prop, but I have to share it with you guys because I have to be honest. The head-to-head data is not great. 3 of his last 8 matchups with Denver, he's cashed the over. They played 4 times this year. Only 1 of those 4 matchups has he cashed the over. He had a pretty big game on their first matchup on October 26th. But in the subsequent games, 1 close miss there, but the other one's pretty narrow, pretty large misses, I should say. Now, Denver overall this year, not a very good defensive team down low. 22nd in points allowed to centers, 18th in rebounds allowed to centers. So it is a good matchup on paper. And you look at some of the centers, Şengün, really good performance. Zach Edey, really good performance. Miles Turner, Rudy Gobert, even some of the bench guys. Thomas Bryant, Oscar, I don't even want to try to pronounce that name. You're seeing centers had some pretty good luck here when playing Denver, and it makes sense. Denver defensively just not a great team. And Zubac, with the run he's on lately, I think it's a pretty good spot to go ahead and tail him here. Is it the riskiest leg of the parlay? Potentially, but I think it's a pretty good spot to go ahead and tail. All right, guys, our third leg of our 4-leg parlay, moving back onto the Pistons-Knicks game, 6 p.m. tip-off. Karl-Anthony Towns, over 1.5 assists. Very high alternate line, minus 430 odds. I contemplated not even throwing it in the parlay, but I think it's a pretty much a lock to hit here. And honestly, if it adds even a little extra value to the parlay from a profit perspective, I might as well throw it in. Really good numbers here. The recent data is fine. Overall data, 76% hit rate this year, averaging 3.08 assists per game this season. From a head-to-head perspective, each of his last 4 matchups with Detroit, he's cashed the over, including all 3 times they played this year. 7 assists, 3 assists, and 5 assists. At least 3 assists in all 3 matchups with a pretty decent amount of potential assists in each of these games. The Pistons overall this year versus centers, bottom 4 in the NBA in assists allowed to centers. And honestly, if you narrow it down the last 15 games, that data still remains the same. So like I said, kind of a weird player prop to throw in there. Very juiced, minus 430. But I do think it's a pretty much lock to hit. And if it adds a little extra value, why not throw it in? An extra egg in the Easter basket, if you will. In our 4th and final leg of today's parlay, going back to the Timberwolves-Lakers game, 8:30 p.m. tip-off, we're going Julius Randle of the Timberwolves, over 22.5 points plus rebounds, minus 260 over on FanDuel. Now, the recent data is fine, nothing to really write home about, but the overall numbers are fantastic. 71% hit rate on the year for Randle, averaging 25.72 points plus rebounds per game overall this season. But the real kicker here, the one that really excites me about this player prop, is the head-to-head data here. For each of his last 4 matchups with the Lakers, his former team, he's cashed the over. That's a 100% hit rate, averaging 28.75 points plus rebounds per game across those last 4 matchups. They played 3 times this season. He's cashed the over in all 3 games. Were there some narrow cashes? Absolutely, but they were still cashes. nonetheless. And versus power forwards this year, the Lakers, they're doing okay. 18th in points allowed, 4th in rebounds. Obviously, it's a playoff game, big spot. Randall is basically the second scoring option on this Timberwolves team after Anthony Edwards, and Edwards can be a little inconsistent in these spots. So I think Randall to go ahead and help carry the load offensively, score a healthy amount of points, grab some rebounds, I think is a pretty surefire bet here. And jumping on over to FanDuel, quick little recap here. Karl-Anthony Towns over 1.5 assists. Julius Randle over 22.5 points plus rebounds. Giannis Antetokounmpo over 10.5 rebounds, and Ivica Zubac over 26.5 points plus rebounds. I accidentally clicked out the Karl-Anthony Towns one, but if you did keep the Towns one in, it's a plus 223 parlay. Take that one down and just do a 3-leg parlay. It's plus 162. But the whole 4-leg parlay plus 223 odds over on FanDuel. And guys, that is it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, guys, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. No video tomorrow. I don't usually do videos on Sundays anyways, but obviously even a more special occasion, Easter tomorrow. So guys, happy Easter. Enjoy your holiday. Christos Anesti to all my fellow Greeks out there. I know it's a little early to say that. You're supposed to say it after midnight, but I'll say it a little early for you guys. Hope you guys have a blessed holiday here. And yeah, we'll see you back here on Monday. Until then, hope you're all winners. Let's go ahead and make some money.